All right, so now we're going to talk about attraction. And before we actually start talking about concepts, I just want to make sure that when social psychologists talk about attraction, they're not necessarily exclusively talking about romantic attraction. They could also be talking about attraction between friends, and not romantic attraction, but this is, these are qualities in a friend that attracts you to wanting to be their friend. We will definitely be talking about romantic attraction in another lecture, but I just want to say overall, attraction doesn't necessarily always mean romantic attraction. So we have this need for affiliation, and that's because we are social creatures and we want to be around other people. And while you have introverts and extroverts, and some people like being around others more than other people, everybody doesn't like being completely alone. Nobody wants to go out and live in the middle of nowhere and never talk to anybody else for the rest of his or her life. And that's because we need some sort of connection with other people. So because of this need for affiliation, we are driven to look for relationships with other people. And so that's one of the reasons why we have friendships, because we're driven to do it. One of the easiest predictors of whether a relationship will form is whether this is somebody you interact with. So as you can easily imagine, it is much more likely that you're going to become friends with somebody who goes to the same school as you than somebody who goes to school, let's say, in Africa. It's going to be very unlikely that you're going to have an opportunity to interact with somebody who goes to school in Africa and form a relationship relative to the number of relationships you have with people who go to school with you now. But a kind of even better example of proximity is office romances. So for better or worse, there are always a lot of office romances, and that's because these are the people who you are most likely to be interacting with. And when you're interacting with people, those are the kinds of people you're going to form relationships with. So although a lot of people look down on office romances, because of proximity, there are always going to be office romances. Reciprocity also predicts attraction. So we tend to like the people who like us. So if somebody says, "Hey, you're great," you're going to be like, "Yeah, I like this person. I think that guy's great too." And now you both like each other because you both think you're great. And you have formed a relationship. You feel attraction toward each other. And again, this doesn't necessarily have to be romantic attraction. So if you're in class and somebody's like, "Hey, you're really smart," and you have positive feeling towards that person, and you're like, "You know what, you're kind of smart too," then you've experienced reciprocity. The matching hypothesis is pretty simple, and it says that we like people who are similar to us. And this really shouldn't come as a surprise. So we like people who are kind of like us. Now, of course, you can always think of, let me think of my best friend, and here are ways that my best friend is very different from me. But for the most part, your best friend is probably very similar to you. On core ways of thinking and core ways of behaving, you and your best friend probably have a great deal of overlap. So while it's always easy to pick out the one or two things about each other that is different, for the most part, you probably have a lot of overlap in terms of the things that you like and the ways that you behave.